For thousands of years, the story of the Exodus has captivated humanity. The image of Moses parting the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to escape while the pursuing Egyptian army is swallowed by the returning waters, is one of the most powerful narratives in history. For many, it's a tale of faith and divine intervention. But for others, it's a legend, a myth from a bygone era. What if I told you that physical evidence might have been discovered, lying at the bottom of the very sea where this epic event was said to have taken place? In the late 1970s, a researcher named Ron Wyatt made a stunning announcement. He claimed to have found something extraordinary in the Gulf of Aqaba, a branch of the Red Sea. What was it? The remains of ancient Egyptian chariots. Wyatt's story begins with his belief that the traditional site of the Red Sea crossing, the Gulf of Suez, was geographically incorrect. Based on his interpretation of biblical texts, he pinpointed a different location, a spot along the coast of the Sinai Peninsula at Nuweiba Beach, leading across the Gulf of Aqaba to what is now Saudi Arabia. What makes this location so unique? Well, if you look at a bathymetric map, a map of the seafloor, you'll see something astonishing. Stretching from Nuweiba Beach across the Gulf of Aqaba is a natural, underwater land bridge. On either side of this bridge, the seafloor drops to depths of thousands of feet, but this pathway is relatively shallow, only a few hundred feet deep. The slope is also gentle, making it a plausible route for a large group of people and wagons to cross. It was here, along this submerged pathway, that Wyatt and his team conducted a series of dives. And what they reported finding was mind-blowing. They described seeing chariot wheels, some still attached to axles, scattered across the seafloor. Some of these wheels were even covered in coral, which had preserved their shape over the centuries. They claimed to have found 4, 6, and 8-spoked wheels, consistent with different periods of Egyptian history, including the 18th dynasty, the time when many scholars place the Exodus. One of the most famous artifacts they allegedly recovered was a gilded, 4-spoked chariot wheel. Gold doesn't corrode in salt water, so it would have been beautifully preserved. Wyatt claimed he presented this wheel to the former director of the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities, who supposedly identified it as belonging to the 18th dynasty. Photos from Wyatt's expedition circulated, showing coral-encrusted, circular objects that indeed resembled ancient wheels. They also reported finding other objects, including what they believed to be human and horse skeletal remains, now completely mineralized and part of the coral formations. This sounds like definitive proof. Right, the story of the Exodus, validated by modern archaeology. Well, this is where the story gets complicated. From the very beginning, Wyatt's claims were met with intense skepticism from the mainstream scientific and archaeological communities. One of the biggest criticisms was the lack of formal, peer-reviewed evidence. Wyatt operated largely outside of established academic institutions, and his findings were primarily published through his own organization, not in recognized scientific journals. Critics argue that the chariot wheels are nothing more than naturally formed coral. Coral can grow in all sorts of shapes, including circular patterns that might, with a bit of imagination, look like a wheel. Without bringing up a sample and subjecting it to rigorous analysis by multiple, independent experts, it's impossible to confirm what these objects truly are. The photos, while intriguing, are not clear enough to be conclusive. They are often murky and could be interpreted in many ways. Furthermore, the story about the gilded wheel being verified by the director of the Egyptian Museum has been disputed. There's no official record of this meeting or verification. This lack of documentation is a major red flag for historians and archaeologists, who rely on a meticulous chain of evidence. Science demands repeatable, verifiable proof, and in this case, the proof has been elusive. Another key figure, a Swedish scientist named Lennart Mahler, later took up the research. In his book, The Exodus Case, he presented a more systematic investigation of the Nuweiba Beach crossing site. Mahler's team also dived in the area and took extensive photographs and sonar scans of the seafloor. Their findings seemed to corroborate Wyatt's initial claims. They identified numerous wheel-shaped objects and what they interpreted as chariot cabs and other debris scattered along the underwater land bridge. Mahler argued that the specific number and types of spokes on the wheels 4, 6, and 8 were crucial. He contended that these different types were used by the Egyptian army during the New Kingdom period, aligning perfectly with the Exodus timeline. He also highlighted the sheer number of these objects, suggesting that the scattering was consistent with a large army being suddenly overwhelmed and destroyed. But again, like Wyatt, Mahler's work has been primarily embraced within faith-based communities and has not gained traction in mainstream academia. The fundamental problem remains: are these coral-encrusted objects man-made artifacts or just curiously shaped natural formations? So, where does this leave us? We have a compelling theory, a perfect geographical location with the underwater land bridge, and intriguing, though controversial, photographic evidence. On one hand, you have dedicated researchers who believe they have found physical proof of one of the Bible's most foundational stories. Their passion and conviction are undeniable. On the other hand, you have the scientific establishment demanding a higher standard of proof: rigorous, documented, and peer-reviewed evidence that simply hasn't been provided to their satisfaction. Could it be that these formations are just a remarkable coincidence, a geological anomaly combined with wishful thinking? Or is it possible that at the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba lies the final resting place of a Pharaoh's army, just as the ancient texts described? The mystery of the Red Sea chariot wheels remains one of the most fascinating and contentious subjects at the intersection of faith, history, and science. It challenges us to ask what we consider to be proof. Is it a story passed down for millennia? Is it a grainy photograph of a coral-encrusted object? Or is it an artifact in a museum, verified by a dozen experts? Perhaps the truth is still down there, waiting for the right technology or the right team to finally bring it to light, once and for all. Until then, the Red Sea holds its secrets close. What do you think? Are these real chariot wheels or just coral? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into history's great mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. See you next time.